Good morning and happy Tuesday. So we've been talking about the power of vision and the power of making a decision and how the people that we talk about, down the road and after they're dead, and when we do seminars like this or stories like this or motivational speeches like this, the people that end up getting their story told are people that have a vision and they run towards that vision with no other options. As the old saying goes, when Cortez came to the New World, he burnt his ships, and as a result, his crew was highly motivated. So one of the things that you need to do when you decide that you're going to achieve a goal is to take away all other options. Well, when you talk about visionaries, Disney is my favorite, and I love going to Disney World. My ex-wife and my daughter and I went 14 times during her childhood, and I loved every one of those trips. And the culture that Walt Disney created, to me, I've never worked for Tesla. I didn't work at Apple when Steve Jobs was there, and I never went to the campuses, so I haven't been on there to see what that was like. But Disney, to me, is always my favorite in terms of how that man's vision is still pervasive at those parks today. So Walt Disney opens up Disneyland in 1955. And let's remember that everything that Walt was told that he could do, everybody in the world told him that he couldn't do and it would never work out. He actually had a first cousin that lived in Freeport, my hometown, for a long time, passed away recently. They were about the same age. And I asked him once, I said, did you get to know Walt? And he said, no. He goes, he was always busy doing stuff. But I remember being at family reunions when I was a kid, and I think their dads were brothers or something like that. He was a first cousin. And he goes, my dad told me to stay away from him. He said, that's your crazy cousin Walt. That's how Walt was always looked at. When he did Snow White, everybody told him that would fail. He put all of his money into it, every dime that he had. He did a full-length feature film that was a cartoon. Everybody said that was crazy. When he started out, he said, the first scene of the movie, I want the camera to come through the forest towards the castle, and I want the forest to move past the screen. And they all said, well, you can't do that with animation. And Walt said, well, we're going to find a way to do it. And he came up with his term that he always used, we're going to figure out how to plus it. Well, they did find a way how to do it, and he did it as a full premiere like any other movie, which everybody else also told him it was crazy. And, of course, the rest is history. He didn't have any money, and he got offered money for Mickey Mouse. He got offered a lot of money for that cartoon and that character to come work for somebody else and draw for them and do that character. And if you don't know, Walt ended up being the voice of Mickey Mouse. Other people tried like crazy to do the voice, and Walt kept telling them, no, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. So finally they said, would you just get in there and do it? And he was the voice of Mickey Mouse because, of course, they were the same, they were the same character. That was his character. So when he opens Disneyland out in California in 1955, he is severely limited by geography, and he's also severely limited by all kinds of regulations, zoning and noise and this and that. So it isn't long after it's open that he realizes he wants to go somewhere where he doesn't have to do that. So he sets up a bunch of shell corporations, gets a bunch of straw man, and buys enough swampland in the middle of Florida that he can become his own county. So that he doesn't have to worry about zoning, he doesn't have to worry about water, he doesn't have to worry about anything. He can take care of all of it himself, and he only has to worry about the state. And Disney World was born with Walt Disney County. So Walt died in 1966. Disney World opened up in 1970, 1971, I believe. I think it was 1971. So he actually didn't even see that park open. But even before that park opened, he said there's going to be all kinds of other things here. Epcot, other parks, other hotels, places to come, golf courses. He saw all of that right from the beginning in this puddle of swampland. His favorite phrase is, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. So when Epcot finally opened up in 1982, I think, Epcot stood and does stand for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. Walt's idea, of course, bring the whole world together. You know, he wanted that to happen. And it was kind of set up to be a permanent World's Fair, where in the front would be all kinds of stuff from the United States. And then as you went around the huge lake, every kiosk would be another country. And they would have their own stuff and their own wares. And it would be this permanent World's Fair. And one of the things about Epcot is everybody who works in each country has to be from that country. And then they all live together in a community behind the facility. So that's Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. And I remember my first trip to Disney as a kid was in the early 70s. And they took us around on a tour because they were trying to sell timeshares and sell condos. And they had Disney World open, and that was it. And it was pretty limited when it first opened. And they took you to all these places, and they said, Epcot is going to be here, and there's going to be a championship golf course here, and there's going to be this here and that here. My dad said to me one time, he goes, you know, imagine if we'd have bought one of those condos. He goes, I was there, and they were talking about, you know, hey, we're going to be selling these condos here. And he goes, and I didn't buy one. He goes, imagine if I'd have bought one of those things back in, 1974. Well, when they opened up Epcot, Roy Disney was still alive. Roy Disney was Walt's older brother, and he was the one that always tried to be the bastion of reason, telling Walt, we can't do this. Walt would go tell the bankers up in New York, we're going to build this new park, and the bankers would go, okay, we got to see your plan for that. And he would say, no problem, we'll have that to you in 2 days. And then he would come back and tell Roy, okay, we got to put our plan together in order to build that park. And Roy would go, what are you talking about? We have no idea how to do that. And Walt would go, yeah, but that's great. That's how we're gonna figure it out. The top of the castle in Disney World is covered in 18-karat gold. Walt told Roy, I want to put gold on the top of that castle so that it shines from all over the place. And Roy said, Walt, that costs way too much money. We can't do that. So he sent Roy on vacation, and then he did it. That was their relationship. But Walt listened to his older brother Roy, because his older brother Roy took care of him when they were kids. They had a very, very difficult upbringing. They were both born in Chicago, Illinois, and moved to Missouri. And they had an incredibly difficult upbringing. They delivered newspapers in the morning in the cold, and they used to have to work every evening. They were almost a little bit migrant workers. They had a tough father who was very difficult on them, and Roy would protect Walt. So at the press conference for Epcot, Roy was still there, and he was holding that press conference, and he was talking about, the vision that Walt had, and here we are. And a reporter raised his hand and was really pretty snotty and said, it must be a bittersweet day that your brother's not here to see this. And Roy Disney looked at him and he said, well, that's why you're a reporter and not a visionary. Walt saw this. That's why you get to see it. Some people have the ability to just pass on that vision. It's got to be like that working for Tesla. I have a very, very, very good friend that worked for Tesla for years, and she retired, number one, because she needed some sleep, and number two, because she could, having worked for Tesla. And you can tell, talking to her, that it's an us versus them mentality there. We're going to show them that we're going to do this. Everybody says that we can't build this many cars. Everybody says that we're going to show them that we can do this. And Walt's vision is still, in every cast member in that park, how do we plus it? That's the phrase that goes through their heads. How do I plus the experience for this person today? That vision is what we all need for ourselves. And when you get a vision of your life that clear, when you turn off all the noise, when you forget all the nonsense and the to-do lists and the things that don't matter, And when you stop running around trying to fix everybody else instead of yourself, because we're all really good at that, if you can find that vision for yourself that drives you in that fashion, then life becomes effortless. Because as you approach that vision, as you are going towards that idea, you're not going to have to try. It's going to empower you enough and drive you enough and excite you enough that it'll be perpetual movement. So we need to have that same drive for our own life and our own vision that these great visionaries had for the world. And if you do that, life will become effortless. Change your expectations for appreciation. Have a great day, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We're all in this together. Let's take care of each other.